Hello, everybody, and we're live at the closing plenary session. Let's give people, oh, we should shoot something out to Telegram to tell everybody it's live, I guess.
Yeah, we can.
We'll give people a couple of minutes or a few minutes to kind of join the live stream, and then we will get started with a review and report outs of the breakout sessions, and we'll start to synthesize everything that we learned today. Okay, so stand by as people join us, and then we will begin in just a minute or so. Okay, so we've got a few people online. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Let me just do a quick ask. Warren, Beth, are you going to be ready? Not ready? Okay. Deanna, are you ready?
Yeah. Do I need to like...
You can just come right on up. Great. So we're going to get started by doing report outs of the several individual small group breakout sessions, and there was frankly some great activity and some great discussion that happened.
Call them grade out sessions.
They should be great out. So the first report out, excuse me, is on the you can do it. Is she on there? The first report out is on the integrating apps and services with an interoperable legal platform, and star students and great volunteer contributors helped a lot with the class, and we appreciate it. Is Diana, and could you maybe introduce yourself and give us a quick overview of what happened? And there's actually several sessions in this breakout. It was more like a breakout track on this topic.
So, hi, my name is Diana, and this morning we are kind of trying to explain how to integrate several legal apps and service. And so, kindly, Juan was explaining first the simple integration with Microsoft servers and also with Slack. That actually was a really cool one. He also kind of gave the note. He's more infrastructure, not software. Cool examples as well is some app that was able to save up to $20 million. For other people that are wondering how this works out, he refers how they manage the Scrum development phase. So this means it's quite fast, not a very long process. He also gave some other uses because it was one of the questions besides e-discovery and so on, is case management and database. So for instance, someone is able to visualize the whole process. And the last two, this kind of more examples he gave was natural language processing. First, you have a text that you need to translate to other language. So he was showing how this works in the platform. And the second one was the integration with Slack that everyone is using. For instance, someone is referencing a document or someone changed the document, you can see the whole thing in Slack. So this is kind of more how this is done, and we explain how they are working with this, and also we see a little bit of code, and was kind enough to explain, and so people who wouldn't be scared of code as well. So it was more or less like this.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, in having kind of popped in for and been the monitor for part of one of the sessions, it was really cool to see him turn stuff that people wouldn't think of as information that's usable. So information just in maybe like a table, what Juan was able to do is able to show people how to turn stuff that's in a table into something that's a dynamic object that can be used and called upon by different apps and services out there that can help just improve that general flow of the way that any legal process is done, or any human process that is kind of on top of that legal process is done. So it really, I think, does a good job of kind of inching us forward in terms of like progressing the way that the practice of law is done, into something that's more efficient, that's more transparent, that's more auditable, that's more understandable, that's more computational. And so I very thankful that we were able to get Juan to join us for not 1 but 2 days.
Right.
And
3 sessions across 2 days.
And he definitely wins the award for most sessions.
Yeah, and also very much also for most prep in a certain way. He had his whole development team working for days across the couple of weeks of prep to develop the sort of scaffolding of these 4 different applications that they showed, to show the range of ways that you could access and kind of manipulate and use the data that was available. The To-Do app, the app where they took data from Discovery and painted it on a map, the app where they did some cognitive search, so-called, but basically translation through a REST interface with Microsoft, or it could have been Google, or it could have been anyone. That's the point of this open application programming layer. And then perhaps the best of all, that Slack application today, right?
Yeah.
Showing how you could actually, and maybe more of a human-centered method of practicing law around people talking and collaborating, not necessarily a document-centered practice. So a little bit more like the way people develop in technology and the way people work in modern business environments. So really, really refreshing. And so thanks again, Juan. So I'm going to do the report out for Elizabeth Ramirez. I was her monitor, and thank you for joining for that, and thanks for everything. I think we should give a quick round of applause to Diana. Thank you. She filled the role very much like how Mila was last year. It's just like a superstar student that stepped up and contributed a lot. So thank you. And who knows, maybe next year, you start getting some roles. What's going to happen after Elizabeth's? Can you do?
Yeah, we can jump in and talk about the smart legal contracts after that.
Okay, great. So in Elizabeth Ramirez, my mic on?
I'll switch you.
Okay. Okay, great. Mic 1. In Elizabeth Ramirez's breakout session on legal frameworks for identity and personal data, looking on the one hand at a property law paradigm where you're buying and selling and treating data as something that we own, versus a human rights and civil liberties framework, which is such a different way to look at identity and people's most intimate objects, our papers and our effects and emanations of our identity, like maybe like near equivalence, like the unique patterns, like for voice recognition, facial recognition. So these are things maybe just half a step away from DNA itself, and the
proxy for DNA almost.
Yeah, and so there's these gradations play out in cyberspace very definitely with identity, and how do we track from physical to digital world, and what frameworks apply? Do any current frameworks apply appropriately, and how do we know what do we think about what should apply? So some of the highlights from that lecture were first of all, the questions were terrific. We had some very good engagement from the people in the sessions, so thank you for that. And one of the things that Elizabeth spoke to that comes to mind as particularly interesting was in response to the question, how do we know which framework ought to apply to our personal data and identity? And what happens if when you apply, if there's 2 frameworks that apply at the same time, what if they have different rules and requirements? What if they achieve different legal results? Will that be confusing somehow? And how do we manage that kind of complexity? How will people know how to behave and what to do? And so the way she treated that was by, one of the insights that she shared was maybe we need to be careful not to have too much reductionism with this, to almost try to think of like very binary rules of like if A, B, and C, then D, E, and F, and if, but maybe just what we need to understand more is maybe a little bit more nuance, and providing more kind of, I guess I would say something like legal processes by which the result in a given set of circumstances can be determined. So in the law, we have like multi-part, like multi-pronged weighted sort of algorithms that we apply in all kinds of situations in the law.
Totality of circumstances.
Totality of circumstances, but not without a little bit more. So she was saying maybe what we ought to do is think about what are some of the key circumstances and factors one would take into account. So that was very interesting. Another thing that came up, which was a thread of several questions, was the international overlay here. So human rights itself is not like, a statute in Wisconsin or something. It's a matter of many layers of international law and treaty and custom, and some countries and regions and European Union and other have legal sources for human rights and civil liberties that are regional, which further complicates an international analysis. And so we mused about that for a while. Go back, I guess, but the basic thing is there was a lot of great content. Check the video for everything. I don't want to repeat everything, but at the end of, I'm sorry, there was one other question that came up, but Johnny joined us from a session that we had to postpone for technical reasons. The session on basically the world of work and what's going to happen with work as we go through this whole digital transformation, and specifically what legal frameworks ought to apply. There's a lot for data when you're in an employee situation, and then what does it mean even if it's not employee analysis or it's not a labor union kind of negotiated agreement that governs use, but what if you're a gig worker?
Yeah.
And so now we still have work, and what are the rights and obligations, and who gets all the benefits from this data, and do we even know what's going on with the data? Are we so free when we're independent contractors? Like we have this kind of idea from the 1850s of, I've got my tool belt and my horse and, I'm totally free, to be an independent contractor and kind of call it my way. There's new gradations of what it means to be a worker. And that came up a great deal too.
Yeah. I'm really excited for when we wind up ultimately having that session, because I think I think there hasn't been a lot of discussion in this area that can kind of balance out some of the information asymmetries that have developed within the kind of like data marketplace that's out there. So that'll be one to tune into for sure, and we'll be sure to get the live session posted and have it so that everybody who is in this course is able to go back and collaborate on it, and kind of provide feedback and basically relive the experience of the last couple of days.
Can we switch to your mic?
Yeah.
Okay. You're on.
All right. So in the smart legal contracts session, we had a couple difficulties. That session started a little bit later. Anyway, I think it started at 1:15, but due to some audio issues, the conversation didn't really get going until probably about 1:20, and then we had the glorious fire alarm that sent us all out of the building, and that I'm sure many of you who are listening to the live broadcast had the unpleasant fortune to have blaring through your computer speakers or your headphones or whatever. So we apologize for having to subject you to that. But some of the interesting things that we were able to cover in the Smart Legal Contracts session included some things that I think you're going to hear more about later, and that would be with non-fungible tokens and figuring out how those could be used in the art or music context to kind of at least help scope out the different rights that musicians could have. We talked about some of the market implications of being able to actually distribute all of this knowledge in a way that in ways that are lower cost and that provide more a little bit more customization and granularity and specificity when it comes to the apportionment of rights. And so I think if you tune into that, you'll probably be able to hopefully see that the direction things are heading is very exciting, because it's more kind of based on meritocracy a little bit, or the idea is that it will be more merit based and kind of working in a way that gets it to the people who created it. And so I think that's something that all of the music people who've been here can definitely appreciate. And it goes back to something George said yesterday, where he talked about kind of the decommodification of music from being something that, you know, is less focused on the product and more focused on the people and the situations and kind of all of those things that makes music so good and so personable. And I'm trying to think of, we did have the good fortune also to discuss one of my favorite topics. We dove into the world of CryptoKitties a little bit and talked about framing kind of the what was it, the PRO to music, the music creator to kind of like the music house, like the Red Bull music house, and using that kind of constellation and that ecology as a case study in the ways that you could build out a potential, or at least map out some of the things that we talked about yesterday.
Yeah.
And so that was it was unfortunately cut short, and we apologize again for that.
You want me?
Oh, do you want me?
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Yeah, it was alarming. So so I'm learning from the pun meister. Another report out that we want to do before we close the report outs is on this in-person session that happened yesterday, kind of concurrently with this primarily online course that we did in partnership with Open Music Initiative and some invited collaborators from IBM who worked with Hyperledger and Red Bull, as Brian just mentioned, helping us think through these issues with the context of the Red Bull
Music House,
which has got a lot. Thank you. Line, please. Which has got a lot of, which is involved in many different parts of the music ecosystem.
Yeah.
It was a very creative workshop, and GMA helped to facilitate and scribe and actually co-create part of that. I was wondering if you could help give us a little report out of what happened.
Yeah, so after a really amazing day of lectures and presentations, the class came together to, one, figure out what the purpose of technology for an open music initiative would look like, and we kind of determined that the goal is to make sure that musicians are paid and are credited properly for the wonderful music that they produce. So we were able to use an architecture, like a scaffolding, that included figuring out the roles of the different players in what we're trying to, in the landscape we were looking at, and then breaking it down by business, legal, and technology. And what we ended up doing was using Red Bull and the artists that they use to do this, to do this. And it was really great because we had a crypto expert in the room from IBM Hyperledger who was able to walk us through some of the limitations of the technology and how we could address certain issues in order to successfully achieve the goal. So yeah, that's kind of like a high-level overview.
Can I just say one thing about that?
Oh, please.
So I think one of the great things about that session was that you had different stakeholders there, and with very different backgrounds, sort of working through how this would all work, and so I thought that was a really, really successful session.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to one of kind of the general approaches that we've tried to keep constant throughout the entire course, where we talk about the business, legal, and technical sections of kind of mapping out diagram and whatnot. But something that we talked about a little bit yesterday was how important the social aspect of all of this is. And so to the extent that we can, those things are ones that should be highlighted. And coming up next the next report out is going to be with Beth and Warren from the bankruptcy and dynamic design workshop that sought to kind of map out that whole process and better understand it and figure out, you know, to what extent are these crypto assets kind of how do we treat them in a bankruptcy context?
Yeah, so we had a really awesome discussion about you know, trying to create a framework for talking about this extremely complex subject of you know, if token holders or if there's a bankruptcy of a blockchain company and token holders are you know, involved, are tokens assets, are the token holders secured creditors, unsecured creditors, not part of a creditor class at all if bankruptcy, I mean, if the tokens aren't considered an asset. So yeah, we had you know, a diagram that kind of emerged, and so we drew that out. I think it is about to appear behind us. Yeah, so while that's getting up there, I just wanted to share that you know, some of us talked about the fact that there's the RealTime Board for continuing to collaborate about this and kind of expand our dynamics design framework for thinking about this complex system. And then the Arena, which is a like resource repository that I've been using to map out, you know, my thoughts. And okay, so if you can see the links behind us, or whatever direction that is, yeah, and then
and this, I'm sorry, quick public service announcement. Also, if you want to get really like all the bits and bytes, check out the Telegram channel where we've just pumped a high quality image of this diagram.
Yeah,
Okay.
and there will be you know, even more high quality image on the RealTime Board, so which is a you know, tool for sharing like flowcharts and design. And we'll also be posting those in the Telegram if anyone wants to continue and, you know, talk further about all of those questions that arose that we only got to scratch the surface of. You know, if there's some immediate questions that arose, such as, you know, what changes if there's a non-fungible token involved? What if it's a stable coin? Could these different types of token classes be used in conjunction with each other for protecting, you know, different classes of creditors, or, you know, just basically starting to strategically use these levers and mechanisms and structures that kind of emerge in bankruptcy to, you know, like make smarter decisions about making ICOs and having token assets. So yeah, I think Warren's going to go through the chart a little bit.
Right. So
maybe not.
no, I can. And so there's two things that we have up, and one of them is not in the picture, but it's up on the RealTime Board, which is essentially a breakdown of the high-level hierarchy of the structure within the bankruptcy code that determines how you might treat a particular claim within the bankruptcy structure. And essentially, it's a waterfall kind of approach where you first decide whether you have a claim or not, and then you go through the types of claims in order to see whether you're a high priority for payment or a low priority of payment. And that list is essentially secured claims, consumer deposit claims, regular unsecured claims, subordinated unsecured claims, and finally equity positions. So that information, including, I think you'll be putting up some sort of logical structures, conditional statements essentially that let you help you decide whether or not a particular type of asset class or asset claim falls within one of those categories. The second thing that's up on this board is a sort of way of thinking about the token itself and the relationship between the token holder and the various parties that help you understand how a token might fit within this structure. So the idea is you're looking at a sort of diagrammic structure where you have a actor, an acted upon, and the action. So you've got these three things going on. And one thing that came out of the questions, which was very interesting, was the fact that there very often is a difference between the token issuer and a separate trust or authority that has some control fee functions. And so we've set this up as sort of a three-party diagram. There may be additional kinds of relationships that people might come up with, and The idea of the diagram, though, is to break down the characteristics of the token so that instead of thinking about it as a token of some type or another, you think about it as this collection of characteristics, and then you can take that collection of characteristics and view it through the lens of the conditional statements that describe the statutory construct, and that can give you some idea as to how that particular token might be treated within the statutory construct.
Yeah, and that has really cool applications for tying into some of the things about smart contracts that people have been talking about, where it's like, how can we create, a Ricardian contract, a smart contract, like, a type of, machine readable and human readable and like, legal system interoperable structure that's able to encode all of this complex information without having, too narrow of parameters, but also, accounting for complexity and even automating out some of the complexity so that, these decisions that can be made about, I guess the point behind a bankruptcy, which is making sure that everyone is behaving in an ethical way that makes sure that everyone is whole and like businesses are structured and, with efficiency and, equal, like access to justice pretty much. So, yeah.
I think that wraps it up.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It was so awesome.
Oh, yay.
Yeah, you really do deserve applause. That was perhaps more awesome than you know. Yeah, I do. As a matter of fact, get on in there.
I just want to add, I think this is a really cool way of.
Can you join us now? Thanks.
I think this is a really cool way of. This seems like a really good way of taking a legal process, figuring out how it kind of fits in with new technologies, and kind of learning what the steps are to kind of atomize that down at different levels so that, we can start computing the law in meaningful ways.
Are you on mute? Okay, yes.
Yeah.
You're up. And could you aim it toward him?
Yeah.
So an interesting part about the bankruptcy session was that as someone who's not super expert in this whole field, sort of thinking about what, when the system fails, when the system goes bankrupt, that helps thinking about how to deal with that helps you understand what the parts of the system were, right? So,
yeah.
So we had lots of questions about, how to understand the tokens of various types and how to treat them based on who would get what when the whole thing went bankrupt. So that I thought that was very useful and maybe an approach that could be used in lots of ways.
Go on mute.
Yeah.
Yeah, just so part of the reason why, just by way of reflection, why I asked Beth and Warren to, first of all, to team up on this is because Beth has got depth in this blockchain space and using analytic and design-oriented approaches like mechanism design. It comes out of economics, and obviously Warren has got real depth and expertise in bankruptcy and is also quite the. And yet Beth also is quite conversant in bankruptcy. Her dad's a bankruptcy lawyer, and he's hanging out with Tony Lai and Legal.io and in that space. And he worked in 2 bankruptcy courts. More to the point, law school. And Warren's got amazing technical depth. Is teaching data science. Lawyers chairs the legal analytics committee of the ABA. We thought it would be a good pairing, but on this topic, the reason we want to spend more resources and time and focus on it was precisely because one can know the nature of a thing, perhaps sometimes most clearly at the key life cycle events. And birth and death are the biggest ones. And so when the thing comes apart, there's very important reasons to have to understand it, especially when it's a legal entity and there may be debts outstanding. People are motivated, and so we've had now centuries of experience and focus and legislation, and the result of fighting and arguing and curiosity, people working out how shall we arrange this. We can now perhaps learn a lot not only from that, but extrapolate some of it might be a direct fit when we're trying to understand the different types of classes and get names for things when they're all intangible digital assets. We need some help with frameworks. And secondly, we can perhaps begin to extrapolate from this and think about non-bankruptcy frameworks that could apply during the entire life cycle of digital assets. So just as you were saying, Brian, I think it's particularly valuable source of knowledge and a good starting off point for looking at how about the birth moment of a life cycle of digital entities and classes of digital assets. And certainly the other key life cycles, like when they're exchanged or when they transform and all that. So, so thanks again. And so looking forward, another person we'd like to invite to reflect on their session is Christian Smith, who provided the session on basically cryptography, information security, and protocols. And we did some feedback. We had feedback from students. Everybody enjoyed your session. Everyone learned a lot. So some people were, there's a lot of furious Google searching going on now as people are grappling with and digesting what you had to say. And we'd love to invite you now to reflect on your session and any further thoughts that you had.
Sure.
Thanks, Christian.
Sure. First of all, Daza, I sent you the slides and the references. So there's a whole bunch of links, and they're not posted up there yet.
So we'd like to announce that as soon as we look at email, that there will be that we'll post Christian's slides and links, and that will give you more to work on, less to Google.
Yep. So I guess one of the motivations for the talk or the topic here was that I've had so many conversations over the past couple of years about people trying to use blockchain and other technologies involved cryptography and not understanding some of the basic concepts behind them. And what's happening is there's a sort of cascading effect where people hear things from other people that aren't entirely well grounded and repeat them, and everyone starts to believe things that aren't necessarily 100% true. And there's a kind of a lack of basic literacy on not just the way that cryptography works at the level of the primitives, but also in the context around it. And that's one of the things that's been the most missing in the discussions, is the understanding of why you use certain cryptographic techniques, what the limits of them are, what context is required around them, and how you stitch them together to solve higher order problems. So we have a real fundamental literacy issue with cryptography at the same time that we're trying to grapple with really big social and legal issues. And a good example of that right now is with GDPR and blockchain. And recently, I forget which organization in France, CNIL or something. The folks have started publishing thoughts on reflecting on how does GDPR relate to blockchain? Because when they were working on GDPR, they weren't really thinking about blockchain. They were kind of building up from legal principles and stuff like that. And so there's a really kind of a serious disconnect there, and it shows up most clearly in the right to erasure, right? So you have blockchains and IPFS and some of these technologies, they rely heavily on immutability. You can't change things after the fact. That's one of their principal characteristics. And people are trying to use them for privacy-sensitive applications and put some kind of sensitive data on there, or relate it somehow in ways that aren't necessarily secure. And they're finding that some of the requirements of GDPR, like the right to erasure, are completely incompatible with that.
They're antithetical
Yeah,
to the
exactly.
entire construct.
Exactly. And that's just one really glaring example. There are many, many more. Another is around the idea of even definitions of something like blockchain. California passed some legislation where they defined what blockchain is. But if you were to look at, for example, they use the term decentralized or decentralization in their definition. having to do with the database. And they completely missed the point. And if you look at a piece that Vitalik wrote on decentralization, their definition is self-contradictory according to one view or some aspect of decentralization. So those kinds of issues are really a problem, and I felt that we need to work on building up better awareness and understanding of basic concepts, and also the kind of work that proper, legitimate cryptographers do. I'm not claiming to be one, but folks do have these very well-established, well-developed practices that are that most folks working on some of these really important topics today are completely unaware of. So I think that was the point of my lecture.
Thank you. I'm going to go off mute.
Okay.
Thank you, Christian. So one thing you were very much in the room yesterday, kind of spiritually, in that we were going through basically a kind of a design-oriented discussion with musicians and technologists and business people and lawyers and others in the Open Music Initiative context. And there was some high-level, I would almost call it vision of what would be better somehow with technology, like why can't musicians get paid more? I call that something more of a vision, kind of like, but something that was, I think, entirely constructive was when TMA and others helped to identify what the more specific objectives were. So not the functional specific requirements, but an objective and that could achieve purposes and vision, and then to work backwards from that to start to look at what would the requirements and constraints and implications be. And it reminded me in the information security context of the basic wisdom of the practices behind looking at what the point is in the context, and then using that very much to narrow down the right framework and to apply the right questions to ask, the right kind of tools or primitives that may be appropriate. And so I think there may be a primitive here, which is, it's helpful to start with the end in mind. It's almost something that a grandmother might say, but let's just face it, it doesn't go without saying. And we maybe even need to be more methodical and more thoughtful and more deliberate and just more urgent in some ways about asking these fundamental questions when we're dealing with these systems in particular where there's security elements at play, but also when we're looking at value mapping and when we're looking at how to structure a business model and how to structure the architecture of a system. Similar kind of thinking can be helpful to map back to revenue and incentives and all of that stuff. So the way you're able to describe it in a reasoned, kind of, I don't know, easy to accept is how I feel like way, I think was entirely helpful. And thanks also again for helping share the good word and the gospel of what is a public key and what is a private key and what is a hash function, which just bears repeating again and again until everybody gets it. So thank you, Christian, for being a great contributor again this year. Okay. So there's one more report out that I'll handle, and then we're going to do a preview of a new journal that's going to be launching. And then by popular demand, we're actually going to work through a hands-on scenario. So the final report out, unless if we've missed one, someone telegram us or tap me on the shoulder. But it's Jameson Dempsey's breakout session yesterday on legal hackers. And it was terrific, and we had some great engagement there. He described legal hackers as an international movement, all the different chapters around the world, the types of activities we do, how it's structured. Thanks, Red Bull. Thanks for thank you for showing up. And some of the questions. So one interesting thing that was a takeaway for me was we have a student who is accepted in the course from around Nairobi. And he's been a good contributor, and he's asked many good questions. He's been very diligent, I think, in the application process. And at the same time, some of what came through as we've been calibrating with him is he feels like so many of us around the world that maybe aren't in like New York or in Paris or in Beijing, where some of us just were recently, Silicon Valley, like somewhat remote. This is sort of a niche topic. And so he was looking at this class as a way to get more involved. In discussions with Jameson, came to discover there's a thriving legal hackers community in Nairobi. And we were talking about the Computational Law and Blockchain Festival last year at Nairobi and some of the other things happening in the community there. And there was a connection made. This is exactly what legal hackers is about, and partly some of the approach that we're taking in this open education, free and available to all lecture series and workshop series for the computational law course in 2019 at MIT. And so for me, that was one of the best outcomes, is just, a person at a time, a place at a time, a city at a time, is how it is we can all, move forward. And so there were many other great connections made as well. I think the main thing is that he talked about that we'll hit at the end when we look forward to activities you might be interested in, was the 2019 Computational Law and Blockchain Festival, which I think we're on track to now have maybe 100 cities and all the continents. We had over 50 last year. And there's going to be ample opportunities to dig more deeply into certainly every topic that we've talked about in this course, and many more. If you want to learn more about that, go to legalhackers.org and just review all the great stuff that happened around the world in 2018 in March, and then also take a look at the Stanford
Journal of Blockchain Law and Policy.
Journal of Blockchain Law and Policy. God, you're good, Brian. Thank you. We're in the most recent issue 1, volume 2, I think.
Volume 2 issue.
Volume 2, issue 1, where there was a nice written, basically, report out, in a sense, of the activities and the discussion track of that. So what's going to happen next is we're going to do a preview of a bit of a hacker project that we got together to do here during the course. Many things were started, many things were built. And one of them, as we previewed to you a little earlier, oh, don't go away, Brian. We're gonna bring you in this, was basically a open publication, and which we're going to be calling the MIT Computational Law Journal, modeled somewhat after Stanford's journal that we just discussed. And Stanford's journal, perhaps little known, actually did arise very much out of last year's Computational Law and Blockchain Festival, and that's where they garnered the initial input for some of those articles, and and of course the discussion track what became some of the content, and that's where some of the organizing happened. And it occurred to us as we're prepping for this class, well, if we have a lot more content here, then we, in a sense, know what to do with. And some of it we think has life and value and relevance beyond the four corners of this class. Couldn't we leverage that and sort of reframe some of that so it'd be appropriate input as media chunks in sort of a multimedia journal? And that's what we went ahead and did. And so to kind of walk us through how that looks, and then also we'll be having invitations for you to help us continue to iterate this, is Mila, who had the hot hand, and I gave her an administrator account on PubPub, and she put together a rough outline. Can you show us what we came up with?
Okay,
Yeah.
so we're gonna share screen.
Okay, let's do it.
So, thank you, Daza, for the intro. So this is actually an open call for collaboration besides walking you through this website here, but this journal we are putting together. So in your front page, you can see a little bit of our mission here. So the MIT Computational Law Journal is a work in progress and is planned to unofficial launching in 2019. The following draft, of course, is a contact, but mainly we wish to generate, foster, and propagate public ideas around open technology. Our purpose is to transform law for the digital age. Here we have the pre-launch editorial board. I'm happy to compose alongside my friends and colleagues. Here we have the session for articles and posts, and this is exactly where we wish you will collaborate, either with pieces that come due to what you've seen and discussed in this course, or other things, subjects you might be studying at this moment. You will have event session in which you can find not only computational law workshop course, but also the computational law and blockchain festival. So that's basically it. And also there's one further tab, which is a projects tab. We would love to fill in with amazing contributions from you all. So happy to contribute.
Here. And well done. Can I come off mute?
Yeah.
Okay. Mute. And I have to say, this is very much in the legal hacker spirit, and very much, I think, in the MIT spirit of we do rapid prototyping. We build and we iterate and we get feedback. This is a way to make progress, and you did it. And so thank you for bringing the legal hacker spirit back to MIT and for helping to create this journal that we hope really can be a nexus point for the whole community. Most of whom aren't even part of our community yet. So now there's another interface to join and to contribute and to collaborate. So speaking of which, one of the best things you can have in a journal is content. One of the collaborators at law.MIT.edu, who's a double major graduate of MIT and now a Harvard Law student, is Robert Mahari. Many of you will be familiar with him from previous activities. And Robert actually drafted 2 vignettes that are now in our GitHub wiki in the class repository. And we emailed you the one on negotiation bot that explores a scenario that could truly transform the process of negotiation, coming to agreement on contractual terms. And so that not just the process is different, but the nature of the legal instrument is entirely different as well. And so I'd like to invite Robert, who came all the way down Massachusetts Avenue from Harvard Law School back home to MIT, where we regard you as ours, even though you're temporarily somewhere else. And I'd like to ask you if you'd be willing. Oh, I'm sorry. One other piece of feedback is we engaged several students kind of randomly to ask for feedback on the first day yesterday, and they and among other things we asked them what's working, what's not working, some technical things. But on content, what do you crave more of? Like we told them we have one more day, day 3. We have time to do some more stuff. And what we got back primarily, really uniformly from everyone, I think we told 5 different people, was who some were technologists, some were lawyers. They were from all over the world. Yeah. And they said we'd like some more something we can get our head around, some more of a concrete example that we can discuss. Well, that's why we put vignettes actually into the repository. They're scenario-based, they're capable of legal analysis, and they're written in a way like Warren and Beth were talking about earlier, mapping the actors and the actions in a system into the like parties and transactions. This is one of those places where law and technology, at the design phase at least, have compatible languages. And so Robert wrote up a couple of these, and we asked, and so Robert, can you walk us through the negotiation bot scenario?
Sure. The one on M&A, is that the one?
The other one.
The one
sort of insurance-y.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure.
Yeah. Maybe say who you are.
So thanks for the intro. Like Daza said, I'm a double major from MIT, chemical engineering and management. And then I took a year off, worked in private equity, started collaborating with Daza and kind of developed this interest for legal tech. Now I'm up at the law school that shall be unnamed. And we've been working on these things kind of internationally, all sorts of things. It started with GDPR, I don't know if you remember.
I do.
And it's morphed into so much more. And this was kind of born from a workshop on AI and the future of the legal profession, where we were having these relatively intensive breakout fire starter-esque conversations. And we had some lawyers in the group. And I think, you know, when you don't come from a tech background, it's hard to imagine like what does, you know, computational law look like. So we started to paint a picture, and we then memorialized this here. And specifically, this vignette had the background. Someone just bought their first home, and they're getting a home insurance plan, and they have certain priorities. You know, they want to start a family. They're concerned about long-term financial security. They're in their first job, hoping for a promotion, things like that. And so they signed this general contract with the home insurance company, the way you would do it in any other case. And it's like a standard contract, form contract that doesn't really afford you any way to negotiate. But what happens then is that after filling out a questionnaire assessing what exactly the needs of this homeowner are, what the financial background is, what the kind of emphasis is she wants to place on the negotiation, an AI negotiation bot takes over, contacts the home insurer's negotiation bot, and starts hashing things out, assigning kind of value to, you know, certain kind of more freaky scenarios. For this homeowner specifically, she wants to prevent in every way she can a situation where she's exposed to a large financial loss because she's trying to build up this nest egg and cares a lot about her financial security. And so based on the kind of background that she has provided to her bot through the questionnaire, based on what the home insurance company is valuing, the bot always works out, you know, what is the price of changing a clause? What is the price of a certain concession? They hash out this very, very long document that kind of covers all the possible, or attempts to cover a lot more possible kind of solution space, if you want to think of it that way. It's many thousands of pages long. It's legally binding, and it's added to a distributed ledger of encrypted contracts, cannot be further amended. And then years pass, and one morning there's a hailstorm on the greenhouse, and that's a $5,000 damage. Simultaneously, in the same moment, a lightning strikes a tree nearby. It falls onto the bedroom, causes $8,000 of damage. Now, the general contract that, you know, the homeowner read, that was the standard document, said that the homeowner would be responsible for $1,000 out of pocket for each damage event. And the question is, well, what's a damage event? And if two things happen simultaneously, is that one event or two? And you could litigate over this, and it would be expensive, and it would be frustrating, and it would be the way we do it today. But instead, we look towards this many thousand page long contract. And on page 8,764, it reads, should the house and the greenhouse be damaged separately by hail, lightning, thunder, etc., at the same time, the total out-of-pocket contribution shall be $1,357. Everything's cleared up. This is a legally binding document. There's no litigation. There's no time lost. The insurer covers the remaining damage. Everybody moves on with their life. And so again, this is really just to illustrate, you know, what it could be. I don't think the technology is really there where we could actually trust something like this to happen, but I think it's an interesting kind of primer. And I don't know how you have been doing this in terms of getting feedback from people and having them contribute.
I'm asking them right now to contribute feedback as you're talking.
So yeah, we'd love feedback. Feedback is always great. Love to answer questions.
Yeah. Thank you. So for those of you that aren't monitoring Telegram, could you look at the pigeonhole?
Yeah.
We've invited feedback on the through the pigeonhole that's on the same page with the closing plenary stream. Oh, wait a minute. Let's get a two-shot. Are you getting some? Oh, right up there. Are people saying things?
8 seconds ago.
I'll be damned. Can you scan to see if there's anything we should address? While you're doing that, I want to say, here comes legal hacking in progress. So remember a few moments ago when I said journals are great with content, and then you were talking about this, content. Well, we have an idea, and furthermore, we've been talking about having a more solid collaboration, especially with you so close to MIT again. Omila, we've just made a offer, and we've received an acceptance for another victim, for another happy participant on our pre-launch editorial board. And we're wondering if you wouldn't use your administrator access on the MIT Computational Law Journal draft site to add Robert Mahari to our team. And we'd like to work with you, among other things, in addition to your editorial role. And I know you're good with the grammar and with helping with drafting, because I've seen you do it. But we'd like to invite you to iterate, and we can work with you, your vignettes and scenarios into one of the published articles or posts in the first issue of the journal.
Absolutely, I'd love to. And if I can help kind of create connections up the road, there are some journals there, I hear.
Yeah, I've heard that they sometimes write things and talk about stuff. And so yeah, maybe we'd make some open calls for contributions at that little school down the road. Yep. Okay, so are we good on that?
Yeah.
Did it happen already?
No.
Oh, okay. So we'll hook up as soon as we're off the broadcast. So while we're here, any feedback on the vignettes, Brian?
Yes. Brendan has the most direct feedback in saying that AI bots will be abundant. So that is a pretty strong endorsement. I think Brendan's a super knowledgeable dude.
Yes.
So
excellent.
Also a crowd.
Former media lab alumnus.
Yep. Any other feedback?
So the rest, it seems to just be more general feedback. Just had one question pop up. Yeah, kind of in the general feedback vein. So
anything else?
I think that's it.
Okay, all right.
For now. The app stays open for a while though, so we may get some asynchronous feedback based on people who are watching this farther into the future. So.
Yeah. And I encourage you all to read Robert's other vignette on the merger and acquisition space as well, and how that could be transformed with more automation, but also with the algorithms that can reflect even more nuanced kinds of goals and priorities and other kind of trigger events when one's perhaps looking for potential acquisition targets, or when one wants to remain open to reasonable offers for the purchase or merger of one's own business. So just making it more transparent and more like a market, and then allowing all the paperwork and the legal fees and everything else, the due diligence, to start to become expressed and effectuated through the application of AI-fueled, data-driven, model-based workflows and processes is very exciting. So take a look at that one as well. Okay, so any final reflection?
No, I mean, I think this is awesome. And if people have questions, I don't know what the setup is, but I'm happy to answer and collaborate. I think the beauty of this is the international collaboration aspect. So.
Here. Thank you very much. Oh, and what country are you sometimes found in?
Born and raised in Switzerland, and I am currently 4.5 lingual. So.
Perfect. Great. Well, thanks again.
Thanks
Good support. Appreciate it. Legal hacker. Okay. So what's next?
Is next the famed bake-off?
Okay. Now we're going to do a quick bake-off that Brian's going to lead us through, which is a hands-on.
It will be very much from scratch too, because we don't have anything that exists yet. And do you want me to go on
screen share?
The speaker?
Yeah. So I'm going to go on mute.
All right. So today, everybody, we're based on the feedback that we got yesterday with wanting to create something that is actually usable and that can be kind of like a live app that maybe people walk away and say, hey, that's pretty neat. I am going to create a GitHub or repository for the Computational Law Journal. I'll add the MIT license because that's where we are. It's a public repository. We're going to create it. And so basically what I'm going to do is show you a very quick way to create a website for free. So this is the Computational Law Journal. I'm going to call it the GitHub Pages site. Provide a I'll say placeholder description so that I can get through everything that I want to get through. I'm going to commit that file. From there, we can go to settings. We can go down to GitHub Pages. We can select use the master branch. We can choose a theme. We can say slate. We can select it. Then we have ourselves a I forgot to click save, I think. Then, maybe not. Maybe it takes a minute. Bear with us. Okay, so there. That's all it takes to create a website. I'm going to take this one step further, though, and show you a couple of cool things that you can do within this site. I'm going to see how far I can get in the next 10 minutes. So maybe you decided you wanted to add a something like a client intake form. Let's call this client intake form. And in this form, you want to know the client's name, and it changes it to short answer. You want to know their address. You want to know their country, because we keep it short, and state. And then we hit send, and I'm going to copy this link. I'm going to throw this link in Telegram. Everybody fill this out with some sample information. Notably though, I'm going to grab the embed code. I'm going to copy that embed code. I'm going to go over here to our great website that we've started. I'm going to add the file there. I'm going to commit the changes. Now our website, even though it looks weird in this markdown version, when it's rendered in HTML, it looks a lot better. So in a few moments that will update. And next we can go to responses. We can open Google Sheets. We can click create. And we can see the Google Sheets. So as these entries start pouring in, I can say, let's add a pivot table. And this pivot table has rows and values. So in the rows, I will do column A, and I don't remember what I did for location. So that's going to be column D. I'm going to actually delete that. It's column D. And then the values are going to be the count of column D. I'm going to do count. And then from there, hopefully we get some, oh, awesome. So we got a couple of responses and it messed up here. So I'm going to delete this page. Delete. Oh, did I do them all as times? That was a mistake. Oh, they should be short answer text. I wonder, that's strange. That they all appeared. Oh, okay, great. So Jasha Banana filled this out, and now I'll go back to pivot table, create the pivot table, and say the rows are that one, and say the columns are, or wait, the values are the count of that one. So we can see the count of where they're located. If you had something like maybe you wanted to do something like create a compliance monitoring application, you could use this as one way to do it. If you then decide you want to insert a chart of this information to kind of see where everything's from, you can do that. Sorry, I'm trying to make the chart work right.
So while you're doing that, I want to point a domain at it, okay?
Okay.
Okay, great. So let me take back the screen for a minute. Hello, everybody. So while Brian's just sorting out the tables so that they kind of work, I'm going to show you very quickly how literally after he started doing something, once I got a better sense of what he was doing, I thought, oh, he's making a site. And well, something it's good to have in a site is a domain name.
Yep.
Well, let's take a look at that. So I just kind of literally moments ago got computationallawjournal.org, and it's in fact spelled correctly, so that's good. And let's go back here. So if you were to get that on GoDaddy or any other site, the way you could point the domain at a GitHub Pages website for free instantaneously or anywhere else, but let's stick with GitHub for the moment. As you go, in this case, to the A name, you just kind of go to DNS, just do a little bit of a setting here. Sometimes it can be confusing to talk people through it. So here's screenshots. So if you just exactly do this, it will work. Points to this IP address. I save it. And now I'm going to add a second one just so it propagates a little bit faster through the DNS system so that we can actually show you it working in, I think, real time as soon as Brian's done. The other IP addresses ends 5.4. That's just how GitHub does it. And we documented this in our resources page. And we go to
the Computational Law Journal.
Yep. So hold on, let's go back to your screen share a second. There we go. So on the settings page in GitHub, you kind of go down to GitHub Pages, see that nice little thing there, custom domain, computationallawjournal.org. Yeah, because, you know, org. And then save it.
Obviously.
Obviously. And then notice if you scroll down again, it kind of tells you what your domain is. If you click it, it will probably actually go there now. Okay, not yet. So give it a minute.
Okay.
When you're done with the pivot table, this website will be completely working, and we'll have integrated inputs, and we'll have integrated processing and different visualizations, way to explore the data.
Yeah.
So are you done with the website?
Yeah, I got the pivot table added so that I'll talk a little bit about how I got there. But from this, we generated I think it may have an issue to do with some formatting, which you can kind of. Oh, okay. So here we go. I'll update this a little bit, and instead change it to so that it is viewing a new pivot table, just to kind of see if we can hash this out a little bit.
And let's embed it and close it up.
Yeah. Actually, I'll just leave it alone and see if it's refreshed, because I did get the embed code of the old one there, although, yeah.
Okay. Sometimes it takes a few minutes. Okay. So is that good for now?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think the one thing that I wanted to highlight with this is that the potential applications of this can be pretty cool, but it also is a good way of helping kind of frame what computational thinking looks like, how it can be kind of quickly and easily turned into some sort of minimal viable product. And then from there, you can make it more robust. You can use an actual database instead of Google Sheets as a way to store that information. You can develop more advanced kind of computer sciences that you can apply on top of that data. And then you can play around with the outputs so that they're more interactive, so that they can be used to provide custom notifications maybe in the happening of certain events, like, for example, if you're out of compliance with the GDPR. And so I think this is something that I hope people have found useful And if you have any questions, feel free to provide some feedback about how this could, be improved. And I hope this, now I'm going to see if this is updated, but it hasn't. Alas.
Okay. Well, it will update, and perhaps even by the end of this session. And so, last thing is, if we look at computationallaw.pubpub.org, are we going to see something new?
Sure.
Okay. So let's take one other look at hacking
You
live.
can go to mine.
And sorry.
There we go.
Computational law.
Or no, just go to, I'm on the page.
Scrolling down. Well, look what we see here. Isn't that perfect? So this is a very good example of putting how it is possible to rapidly prototype. And you could, there's nothing about computation or computational law or engineering that requires you to do things in a rapid way. You could do it in a waterfall method, or different types of business methods for sure. But it is particularly well suited, we think, especially when you're building applications, so that you don't get into a situation where you put a lot of time and effort into a technology. This may be information that's somewhat new to attorneys that are not steeped in technology, but where you put a lot of time and effort into technology, and then you find out later it's not perfectly well suited to what you had in mind. By doing a minimum viable product or a smallest workable rendition, trying it out, adding a little more complexity, adding some more features and functions, and trying it yourself to make sure it works. Also getting feedback from all the stakeholders, the users, the administrators, the people that will rely on it, others that may have apps and services that integrate with it, is a way that you can navigate. And it's a particularly well-suited design and deployment methodology, I would say, for these more modern computing methods. And that includes in the law. It's partly why we do legal hackathons, and why we do these other variants of that event, such as rapid prototype jams in the law. Brian, could I ask you to pipe in for one thing before we do the overall close? We couldn't be more excited about this idea of doing a kind of a legal publishing thing about the topics that we're so interested in, with computation and law. And I'm sorry, let me switch the general question. This is very general. As a member of our community and a person that's steeped in the topics, also someone that knows something about legal publishing, frankly, could you just speak a little bit about, as we look forward and we try to put this all together, do you have any kind of thoughts or reflections on, on a direction we might go, or are there any other kinds of legal publishing journals that do this type of topic we might want to look at? Or is there anything we might want to try to do that would be, a particularly good fit for this type of publication?
Yeah, I mean, so we don't really publish journals, but I think that one thing that's kind of most legal journals or law journal articles are typically in this very sort of intimidating format. And so it'd be nice to kind of make this more accessible to the computational side of the house, rather than just legal journals for lawyers. So it'd be very interesting to take advantage of this online medium, have things much more code-based, interactive, links to demos, et cetera, online communities, all that sort of stuff. And as a reflection of this community, I think would be outstanding.
Excellent. So some of what we might want to look at as we continue to formulate what the tabs are in the content sections is, we do have a concept of projects, and that's not too filled out. Brian mentioned code. Like, what about actual examples of things working, snippets of code? And you mentioned online community. So right now we have native and PubPub is discussion and feedback and comments, but online community could go broader. Some kind of sense of chat, like we have with Telegram, or occasional special interest groups that could meet maybe through Google that could be integrated, or pages that would allow ongoing working groups to share and iterate content, or to do reviews and things like that. Have fireside chats, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, just the whole, you've already got an RSS feed, so you can obviously have a kind of blog part that just contains, that just has links to stuff like this course and the various materials and so on.
Oh, yeah, and the course as well. So something we had talked about was actually having a courses or education or something like that tab, and I don't know if that made it to is that in the final? It may not be in the current iteration. It went through
It's part of events.
a few phases last night, so now it's under events, but something where we put, there's a lot of courses on coding for lawyers, on law and legal issues within IEEE and International Telecommunications Union. There's a lot of IETF and other like technology places where they've got legal subtracts. Something that relates to all that learning there, all those courses, all the continuing legal education. Starting to gather more of those Warren Agin's classes, to the extent that some of that type of material was available, so that people interested in this new, I guess, generation for the law, this new way that the law will exist, could start to learn from that as well. I think that's very, very good idea, and we can do that. Our first thought was to put a course in OpenCourseWare or something like that, but the idea of collecting it, or maybe a version of it, and collecting other people's courses as well and letting that grow would be terrific.
Yeah.
Any other, just thinking about publishing and community building and I don't know, standards or workflows or approval chains or marketing or who are the readers? Any other advice you could share with us while we have you?
I feel like you're looking for something in particular.
No, not at all. I'm just
Okay.
thinking, like, I've never published a journal before. I think many of us haven't. Many of the people involved in the Stanford journal, they do have some kind of faculty oversight, and we have people here, but these journals on the new topics, I can think of a few of them, are being done by people that have not done journals before. One thing, I guess I'll just say one thing I'm wondering is how much of a journal format and scope is even appropriate here. You mentioned code snippets and community. These are not typical features of a academic journal, for sure. I'm wondering if something that's more like, I don't know, a multimedia site, or a place where people can actually interact in some way, or, Medium is interesting. Medium's not a journal, but it's a publishing site. But what are kind of modes or types of creatures could be a good fit?
Well, I mean, some of the scientific journals nowadays do contain things like, the data that or links to the data repositories on which the paper is based, and so on. Do contain links to working code. So I think that's becoming more and more mainstream, that, in order that people want replicability, that's always a huge issue these days. This wouldn't be about replicating scientific findings, but allowing people to, adapt what people have, are suggesting when that's applicable. Would be really useful. So I don't know if, so one decision that the journal will have to make is whether things are peer reviewed or not. And if it is peer reviewed, then you need that whole structure of reviewers and editors to nag the reviewers to submit their reviews, and the whole mechanism of, your paper was rejected for these reasons, and all that sort of stuff, which is a lot of overhead. But
yeah, well, yeah, that is something to think about. So what maybe one thing we could look to bring on is, initially we call things posts. It's more like a blog post, and we make it clear it's not peer reviewed. It may be edited, and there may be iterations, and then look to at some point bring on articles that are more scientific and professional community kinds of articles that are peer reviewed, and bring that on as one content type. That brings up the whole idea of sponsorship, and having the occasional poster session or symposium where people come and present their papers, some of which may be published, and who could a sponsor reimburse people for flying in. Or I noticed the Stanford Journal has some sponsorship, and they're actually now using it not just for articles, but they're using it for seed events. So in New York, we're doing a computational law and blockchain festival with Consensus and with some other people, and they're sponsoring pizza, because when people eat the pizza, then they're happy, and then they say things, and then we capture the discussion track, and then in volume 3, issue 1, we'll have proceedings of the 2019 thing, and so like they're kind of going further upstream, like the life cycle events of what will ultimately create content. So maybe there's some creative ways we all can think about, just how we'll put this together and bootstrap it and iterate it over time.
I know some people who are happy to sponsor pizza field events.
Yes.
And even more so.
Yeah. Pizza is great. Pizza is prana for hacking, and everybody knows it. All right, so I would like to do just like a closing round out now, and I don't know if you'd be, when we just go right down the line.
Sure.
All right, can you get us started? Just like, so you've been here for 3 days. I know you had some other stuff going yesterday, and you were also here last year, and you were a great speaker. I have to say, when you showed us the identity and the blockchain and stuff. Any reflections on kind of how did it go? What did you learn? And any feedback on things that we could do better or anything like that. So, Brian.
Yeah, so I'm always happy to participate. I think you're definitely ambitious to try so many different sessions simultaneously. Maybe too many.
Yeah.
And I thought the in-person sessions, where there's kind of at least some people in person with some online participation, seemed to me a lot better than the ones that were purely online.
Good to
from my
know.
personal experience.
Yeah.
I really liked Tiame's event, as I said, where you actually had you had gathered sort of stakeholders representing different interests and perspectives to work through use case in a safe space here, where it wasn't really no one was trying to sell anything. They were just really working through stuff, and I think that's super valuable. Again, I learned so many, just getting introduced to so many different topics and technologies and ways to think about things. It's always really useful for me to participate, and also to bring in some of the January interns that we have and overwhelm them with this immersion in law and technology.
Beautiful. Thank you. So maybe we need to look at not having so many so many concurrent sessions that are online. It's very useful to have sessions where there's people in the room and people online. We can get better at finding ways to do that. One of the things we're trying to avoid this year, and we may have overcorrected, was to make sure that when we have some people in the room and some people online, that the people online don't get basically completely forgotten.
Yeah.
And so we basically tried a method that very much favored the people. It was like online first, pretty much. And I think from your feedback, and I think from what we all observed, maybe doing something that's more mixed would be good. But I'll just say, without ever compromising on making sure everybody online has a way to communicate and to fully participate in some way. But we should look at redoing that. And some of that may just be making sure there's more resources for everyone online. We start on time and we have everything kind of ready to go. Maybe more time between sessions and maybe fewer sessions. Make sure all of that goes well.
And I think the pigeonhole thing is great for kind of gathering the most important questions at the end of a session, so you don't have some rando asking this weird question when everyone else wanted to know something else. But maybe not. It's not the sort of best interactive facilitator for a meeting.
Yeah, yeah. So keep looking at the modes for continuous feedback. Maybe we're back to voice on that and muting people that aren't talking, that kind of thing.
Yeah, or some other kind of chat mechanism, and just being able to see people's reactions. Do people seem engaged? Do they not seem engaged? It's really, you can't really tell that.
We're here. Thank you, Brian. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but I think round of applause for Brian. Thank you. And thanks for all the pizza in years past, just one at a time. Like because like stomach goes right to the hacker heart. TMA?
We would have gladly provided.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, but I don't want to hit you up every year, so maybe later. Thank you, though. TMA, reflections, please.
So I agree with a lot of what Brian said. I think looking back on the last 2 days, what I was really impressed with was actually our ability to engage the online community. Because I think last year we really struggled to get any interaction. So I think maybe we went too far on the other side this year, but yeah, we overcorrected. But I think we learned some really valuable lessons about ways to like have a workflow that works with bringing people from other countries, like to MIT virtually, yeah. And then I think that my one constructive criticism would be maybe we could, or suggestion is to find a way to allow online participants to interactively engage. Because I think one of the things that you were talking about, like being able to diagram out or whiteboard something together, was really constructive. And I know that on some of the breakout sessions that happened, but maybe if it was one lecture that everyone could participate in, and the online members could also, provide feedback or be a part of that process, that would be more valuable, because there's definitely something to be said about having so many people in a room all being able to kind of throw a little bit, out about what they know and what they thought.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you, TMA. And I don't know if you're aware of it, but TMA is put her entire, she's stopped not just these 3 days of her life, but many days before, really for everybody online in particular to be available and to make it, make something that's connected and human and humane. So I just want to thank you for helping us all. The what is it? The team mentor or team monitor advocate, TMA. Okay. Camila.
So I'd like to start off by saying, as a foreigner, for me, what TMA has done is just amazing. Of course, it's very good to be here in person on MIT, just breathing this air already, feel more intelligent a little bit. But it is of a lot. It is very important, that we can get this information and this knowledge as further as we can. So this is one thing. We should look for more ways to collaborate and engage online, especially for building, if possible. We have an expert hack in here and others in this room as well. So this would be one of my main goals. And the second one, and comments. And the second one is that I was really touched by the lecture that was given by both Brian and Brian. And we may have a project coming on. The Burning Man. How should we call it?
It's the United Computational States of
United Computational States, that we're gonna do a demo on Burning Man. So that's my take for the course, and also an invite to see if we can pull that off.
Sure. And thank you for helping us get this the first iteration. Things have to start somewhere or they go nowhere. So thanks for helping really launch the beginning of Computational Law Journal at MIT. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
I feel like with that last one, we also need to give a shout out to Chris Pereira for
That's right.
coming up with the idea of of not just this idea of computational jurisdictions, ones that could be like Burning Man, but actually going to Burning Man.
He made the conceptual link of, well, you could have a Burning Man camp that explored some of this stuff, and then look at bringing it out to wider thing like an entire city sort of thing. But that's another great example of what is the smallest potential way you can still meaningfully test at least some aspect of an idea and get a start, and something that people would actually like to do. Yeah. Christoph Pereira from GE, the man, a true legal hacker. So in the best way. So yes, shouts. Yeah. So Brian, reflections on the course.
Yeah, it was again a ton of fun. I know I mentioned that, you know, at the beginning when we were shooting the introductory videos, maybe last week or a couple weeks ago, that one of the things that I was most looking forward to was just having fun around people and actually hacking on projects and coming up with new ways of doing things, being exposed to things that I didn't even know exist, and kind of really just using that as a way to have a conversation that, in a way that helps people like move forward meaningfully. It kind of goes back to that legal hacker's mission a little bit, I think, but, you know, figuring out how to actually make this kind of justice layer that is embedded in everybody's lives, whether they like it or not, making that something that, you know, is a little bit more human focused and that can be, that can have a real impact on how people do things just based on the way that it's organized, the way that it's designed, the technologies that's used to help facilitate some of these things. I think that's been such a refreshing and fun thing to be a part of. And you know, as far as commentary, I wouldn't suggest getting involved on the core team unless you're fine with not sleeping or eating until 11 p.m. after day one of the course.
Oh yeah, God. Yeah, every night.
But it's been a ton of fun.
Here. Well, thanks for putting it together, literally putting it together. When we got some feedback from students yesterday when we were polling people, kind of, one of the things they said was, well, it was great to have that schedule page where we could kind of just have some anchor in the vastness of cyberspace, where we know if we kind of get it back to that landmass, we can, you know, get to wherever we need to go and kind of keep track of what's going on. And we were pretty good at updating it. Yeah. And I remember when we were first just getting together and prepping for the course, we were just kind of like, changed the whole site and put some tabs on the top and hacked it into existence in a good way. And then, and lecture, frankly, if I could go forward one more, is, you know, we had a kind of very high level overview of, you know, data, applications, analytics, and so forth, that from the thing I said in China. And then we had some very specific deep dives in the computational contracts and this bankruptcy context and you know, integrating apps and services. But your lecture, kind of a survey of computation and law, and then with some very practical examples of how it could be useful, and then the walkthrough of using open source tool set like DocAssemble and all the integrations one can do with that, I thought really scratched the itch, and frankly, I feel it advanced the whole enterprise that's coming together, this whole like new kind of community of thought and practice around computational law. So I think you really nailed it, and you know, one of the best decisions we've made was elevating you to a co-instructor this year. Yeah, so thank you.
No, just got to make people drink the computational law Kool-Aid, and then we'll all be fine. We're sounding, I feel like we're progressively sounding more cult-like with these metaphors, but hopefully not.
Well, you know, I do think that you kind of made it tasty. You made it colorful. You made it refreshing. So it does have some things in common with Kool-Aid, and your nickname is Brian, the cool Brian.
Yeah, I'm not actually the cool Brian.
Yeah, well, and you listening is the coolest Brian, in my book. Oh, yeah. So
look how that progressed.
That's how that went for you. So I'd say, please join me in just thanking Brian Wilson, legal hacker, and putting it together. Thank you, Brian.
Thanks to everybody for making this so fun.
Good. Yeah, and it was fun, and it is fun. So speaking, so going forward a little bit, we've got a couple of quick shout outs for what you can do next, and then we'll wrap. One shout out comes, let's go. Oh, is it working?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me do that last. One shout out is from our fellow collaborator, Robert Mahari. And so there's something coming up next. Can I get the mic back?
Yeah. Let me get that over to you.
Okay. 3. One shout out. So one thing that's happening next that's extremely relevant, and it's a topic area we didn't get as deep into as I hope that we would. It's coming up just later this month, and there is an opportunity to participate if you're around Boston. But more to the point, anywhere online. So Robert, what's happening?
Yeah, so we're doing a like 3-day hackathon on law, ethics, and AI, focused specifically on like sentencing. So if you know the about the Compass sentencing algorithm, we're trying to make a better version of that. And so you can sign up on, I think it's like HLS Hackers. It should be up on that.
HLS Hackers. I didn't know about that.
Okay. HLShackathon.org. And and yeah, we'd love to have remote participation. I can try and help with logistics. And if you're in the Boston area, definitely come by. And is there a way to get my contact information out there?
Yes. Yeah. What can we share? Email?
HLS email. Yeah.
Okay, HLS email.
I'll send that with the link over to you.
Send it by email, and then we will telegram it to everybody, and then we'll send a wrap-up email to everyone as well. And please, let's remember to include this in it. So 2 other quick wrap-up things that we really do want you to know.
Oh yeah.
Present to everyone. If I hit refresh,
You want? I'll
go to
I'll
incognito.
Go to screen share.
Oh my God. If I go to Brian's screen, then you shall see something glorious.
Perhaps.
Glorious. Stop screen share. Here's your screen. Well, look at what we've got here. What's the URL say?
Computationallawjournal.org.
I'll be damned. And so there you have it. So you've actually got a working website with integrated in a data input mechanism for form-based, and then in real time, if anyone wants to fill that form out, you can actually see the data develop and visualize it in a widget later on another part of the same screen. Very, very interesting. Another possible mechanism for feedback live, by the way, during online sessions.
I'll have to figure out how to resize the embed codes for the embedded Google Sheets page, but yeah, I'm happy that works.
Me too. And then one more thing we've got that we want to just make sure people see and are aware of. Am I screen sharing still?
I can pull it up.
Yeah, great. Legal Hackers.
Yep.
Here we go. So if you go to legal hackers wait, are we on the right screen?
You gotta click mine.
I tried. Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Legalhackers.org, and then click on where's CLBFS.
That's the 2018.
Okay, well, actually, so let's show them the secret. So if you then change the URL from CLBFest 2018, unpublished, if you go 2019, you can actually see what we've been working on around the world, and it's soon to go public. The Learn track, the Hack track, the Discuss track, coming to a city near you or your city. And so we encourage everyone to participate in the computational law and blockchain festival activities that are local to you. And I know a number of us are going to try to make some of those activities available online as well. And if you're in a city and you're thinking, geez, I would love it if there was something like this in my city, but we don't have one in my city or my country. How much would you love it? Because if you'd love it very, very much, there's a form that you can fill out at legalhackers.org, which we all filled out, we did at least. And then it says, I want to register a node on this distributed network and create a city. So it's permissionless in that sense. And then we actually take that data and paint it on a Google map and have some automatic links and so forth. And so go ahead and create a node in your city and invite and build your community there. Okay then, so I think, was there any other, oh, there was one final thing, which is, we got some great feedback on the plenary, from Dennis. And his suggestion was, have you thought about doing a podcast as part of this journal, this multimedia journal? Good idea. That's something I know some of us talked about in the past. It's natural. And so now we have, thank you. And we'll take that on board. And then he also used the word in one of his comments, continuous. Are there more opportunities? So when Brian Ulysny was saying, kind of activities and, kind of community building, are there, in addition to like an event of an article that was posted, a podcast that was distributed, are there opportunities for more continuous connection of people in community? Yeah. I think that we should take that on board as well. That could be a nexus point to connect people. And, there's always some significant number of legal hackers awake and curious and who want to play around the world at any given time. The sun never sets on legal hacking. And so
I think we do have one last thing that we also need to do. I think everybody here, we would all be remiss without thanking you for helping assemble all of this.
Let's do it.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Christian. I can literally say it's been like a total pleasure and an honor. I've learned a lot. There's nothing I'd rather be doing these several days, and that's why we do it. And this is it's a free, volunteer, open, and accessible forum. And part of the reason why it is so special is because we like it, and therefore, we sculpt it in the way that responds to what it is we're curious about. And when people are curious about things, there's a really good chance other people are curious too. And so this is very much a way to share what we're into, as birds of a feather, as it were. Yeah. So it's been a delight and a real honor to be able to hang out with all the birds with a feather pattern so beautiful. And so well, I don't know how to put it, just so awesome as you all. So thank you very much for co-creating all together the 2019 MIT IAP Computational Law Workshop course. That's because there's a lot of committees involved in that one. And thank you so much, everybody who literally brought the life and vigor to the course, who were the students and the other participants, and all of the lecturers, all of the discussion leaders. Yeah. A special shout out to all of you. You literally are the course. And so, of course, we love you. So if you want to keep track of what's going on here and where you can learn more about, once we curate everything, come back to our course site, check law.MIT.edu, and perhaps best of all, come back and check computationallaw.pubpub.org, and maybe we'll elevate that to computational. We might update that URL, but watch it there as it evolves, and help us co-create that as well. Get involved and make your suggestions for content. And when we put calls for papers and events and so forth, come join and collaborate with us, and let's all hack the law together. So, thank you. Bye.